The government has threatened legal action against former Chelsea owner Roman Abramovich regarding the proceeds from his sale of the club in May 2022. Our chief correspondent, Kaveh Solhekol, is back with us. Why then?
Well, look, if you remember 3 years ago, Chelsea were very, very close to going out of business because their owner, Roman Abramovich, was sanctioned by the UK government because they alleged that he had close ties to the Russian president, Vladimir Putin, and Russia had just invaded Ukraine again. So he was sanctioned, and there was a real risk that Chelsea could go out of business. They could run out of money. But the government gave Roman Abramovich a special license to allow him to sell Chelsea, but under the understanding that the proceeds from the sale of Chelsea would go to humanitarian causes in Ukraine. Now, Roman Abramovich was forced to basically agree to those terms, and Chelsea were sold for £2.5 billion. Now, this £2.5 billion went into a bank account in London, but it has been languishing in that bank account ever since. Now, Roman Abramovich can't access that money, but legally the money belongs to him. And what he is saying through his lawyers, and what he said at the time, was that he wanted the money to go to all the victims of the war in Ukraine. So that would mean some of the money could end up going to Russia. Now, that is unacceptable for the UK government. The UK government's position is that the money can only go to the victims of the war in Ukraine. So that is the disagreement between the UK government and Roman Abramovich, and that is why we're at this impasse where this incredible amount of money, £2.5 billion, has just been sitting frozen in a bank account in London.
Let's just bring you a couple of statements from the Chancellor and from the Foreign Secretary as well. This is what they've had to say. It's a joint statement which says the government is determined to see the proceeds from the sale of Chelsea Football Club reach humanitarian causes in Ukraine following Russia's illegal full-scale invasion. We are deeply frustrated that it has not been possible to reach agreement on this with Mr. Abramovich so far. While the door for negotiations will remain open, we are fully prepared to pursue this through the courts if required to ensure people suffering in Ukraine can benefit from these proceeds as soon as possible. So that is Rachel Reeves and David Lammy releasing that statement. You would assume, given history, we're not likely to get any sort of response from Roman Abramovich on this.
No, I mean, he speaks very, very rarely. I think he has given one interview for a book that's coming out this summer about what happened at Chelsea and the takeover 3 years ago. But perhaps Roman Abramovich is just playing the long game because legally the money still belongs to him, although he can't access it. Maybe he thinks that in the future we're going to have a situation where there is peace in Ukraine. Maybe a peace deal will be agreed. Maybe the sanctions on him would be lifted, and then the climate would change and he could access that money again. And also, he's in a difficult situation politically because obviously he's Russian and he's alleged to have close ties to the Russian president, Vladimir Putin. So perhaps he's being put under pressure to make sure that the £2.5 billion does not end up going to Ukraine.
All right, Kaveh, thank you very much for the moment. Let's get a little bit more on this, because we've also heard this morning from the Secretary of Defence, John Healey, who further outlined the government's reasoning for potentially taking Abramovich to court.
This is part of the frozen assets connected with the Russian state and those who are, like Abramovich, very closely related to the Russian state. These are assets which could be put to use to support Ukraine, and in particular the redevelopment of Ukraine if we can get a ceasefire. And so the Chancellor and the Foreign Secretary are right to say, look, we will take every step, including potential legal action, to make sure that we can make these assets available to support Ukraine in the future.